Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss basic principles of cell injury and cellular adaptations. In that specific chapter, we will discuss cell injury and the causes of cell injury with apoptosis and the necrosis. This topic comes under third semester Pathophysiology, Gujarat Technological University, and myself, Dinesh Dangar. Starting with the cell injury and the death of cell. As we know that the cells, right? Cells are the basic units of the tissues. And these tissues which forms organs and the system in body. Traditionally, those body cells can be divided into two main types. One could be epithelial and next one will be mesenchymal cells. While coming to the cell injury, how exactly we can define cell injury? So for that, cell injury is defined as the effect of a variety of stresses, right? Here there will be involvement of variety of stresses. It could be termed as a n number of reasons. So cell injury is defined as the effect of a variety of stresses due to etiologic agents or cell encounters resulting in changes in its internal and external environment. Okay, what this definition means? Here, n number of reasons or variety of stresses are responsible for the cell injury. And for that, a specific etiologic agent can be responsible. So for that, specific cause will be responsible behind that injury. And because of that cell injury, cell may have to suffer, resulting in certain changes in their metabolic activity, so that it involves its internal as well as external environment. In general, cells of the body have they have built up a specific mechanism, and that mechanism always deals with the changes in environment, but up to an extent only. In many cases, those cellular responses to stress may vary and it depends on the specific variables. Here there are two variables. It could be host factor, that is the type of cells and tissues involved in it. And second, it could be factors that is pertaining to injurious agent, that is the extent and type of cell injury. So while coming to the injury, it generally have a cellular adaptations or it follows the cellular adaptations. While considering cellular adaptations, it could be a first phenomenon, right, that it follows. Second could be, or it depends on the type of injurious agent or type of etiologic agent. If that specific injury, or we can say that stress, is mild to moderate, the injured cell may recover itself, right? So always it depends on the type of stress or type of etiologic agent and their extent. If it is mild to moderate, then injured cell may recover itself or it may recover, and these types of cell injury can be termed as a reversible cell injury. Second one, while considering the stress is mild to moderate and the cell or the specific injured cell may recover, while persistent and severe form of cell injury may causes cell death. So on the basis of the extent of the etiologic agent or stress, we can divide the cell injury into two types: reversible cell injury and irreversible. As we know that, see, word indicates reversible, it means it can revert back, whereas in the cases of irreversible, it may not revert back. How? Because if the stress is or stress specific may have a too much, or we can say that their extent could be too much, or the severe injury can be termed as a irreversible cell injury. Okay, so here on the basis of the injurious stimulus, it can be divided into the reversible cell injury and the irreversible cell injury. In cases of generally reversible cell injury, it follows necrosis. And in cases of, if it is not, see here the question mark is given, reversible stage. If it revert back, then the injury can be termed as a necrosis, or the final extent will be necrosis, or the final phenomenon will be necrosis. If it is irreversible, then it follows apoptosis. Okay, so here it is reversible cell injury and the irreversible cell injury. As I have earlier mentioned, if damaging stimulus is removed, there will be a reversible morphological and functional changes can be seen in cell. Like example, reduced oxidative phosphorylation, adenosine triphosphate depletion, that is ATP, cellular swelling due to the changes in ion concentrations and the water influx. So it comes under reversible cell injury and it may revert back to their normal stasis, or that is what homeostasis or normal condition. Whereas irreversible injury and the cell death may have a continued damage, right? There will be a continued damage of specific cell and tissues and the organ as well as their involving systems. Here, there will be, in cases of irreversible injury, there will be a continuous cell or tissue damage, which could lead to the injury irreversible. Here, injury becomes irreversible. It cannot revert back. Irreversibly injured cells invariably undergo morphologic changes that is recognized as cell death, either through the apoptosis or the necrosis. While considering these two, necrosis and the apoptosis, these points are important for GTU point of view. Many a time they have asked, write a note on necrosis and the apoptosis. Here, while considering these two types of cell death, here actually they are the basic types of cell death that have exactly cell terminated, or cell will have that specific end products. So here we will have the comparison between these two, that is necrosis and the apoptosis. So starting with the cell size, or the size of the cell. Here in cases of necrosis, the cell will be enlarged. Right? Cell may have a enlarged structure, or there will be a swelling. Whereas in the cases of apoptosis, right, these two are the method which cell may undergo death or cell may undergo lysis. So here in cases of necrosis, cell may have a enlarged size at the end of the process, and during the apoptosis we can see that the reduced or shrinkage of the cell can be seen. Nucleus. In cases of nucleus, it could be phimosis. Next is the choriorrhexis and the cardiolysis. Whereas apoptosis follows the fragmentation into the nucleosome size fragments. Right here, there will be a fragmentation of those specific, nuclear content. Next is the plasma membrane. While considering necrosis, the plasma membrane may undergo disruption, or it will be disrupted. Whereas in the cases of apoptosis, it will be intact, but there might be a certain alteration into their structures, especially while considering orientation of lipids. While coming to the cellular contents of it, we can see that the enzymatic digestion may be followed, and may it leak out of the cell, or it may leak out of the cell. So all those content of the cell will be leaked during necrosis. Whereas in the cases of apoptosis, it will be intact and may be released in apoptic bodies. Right? In cases of necrosis, it will be released straightforward. Right? In surrounding tissues, there will be the content of that specific digested cell. Whereas in the cases of apoptosis, it may not generate directly, but it forms those apoptic bodies. Right? It forms apoptic bodies, a kind of structures or vesicles, which may have those fragmented tissues, or the fragmented tissues or fragmented cells, or their specific organelles. Next is the adjacent inflammation. Here in cases of necrosis, it can be seen, right? Inflammation can be seen. Whereas in the cases of apoptosis, there may not be a presence of inflammation. Here, next is the physiologic and the pathologic role. While considering necrosis, we can see the invariably pathologic, right? The pathology could be have a, or it could have a variations, right? In the cases of while considering apoptosis, it could be often physiologic, and it means of eliminating the unwanted those specific cells, leading to the pathology of it. So here we had a the discussion on necrosis and the apoptosis. Here in diagram we can see the differences between these two, right? Normal cell and the during the necrosis and the apoptosis. See here we can see the difference while considering. See, first point was like in cases of necrosis, cell may undergo swallowing. As you can see that the normal cells may have a smaller size as compared to the necrosis. Here in cases of necrosis, the size of the cell may be increased, whereas in the cases of apoptosis, we can see that the size may not be the issue here, but there might be a certain alterations in the the shape of the cell. And after that also, here we can see that their organelles or the fluid will be, that is intracellular fluid will be released in surroundings, as you can see here in necrosis, the final step of the necrosis. But in the cases of apoptosis, there might be a formation of those small apoptic bodies, right, which may have certain fragments of the nucleus, certain fragments of the those organelles, and how exactly it will be released. And at last, apoptosis, the phagocyte will be there, which may have a phagocytosis. Yeah, that is the further process that follows it, right? So here we can mention this the difference, or we can say that the comparison with this specific diagram while coming with the exam point of view. Next, that is the causes of cell injury, right? The causes of cell injury. While considering the causes, right, here there are many more than 10 to 15 different causes, or we can say that etiology of cell injury. And while considering cell, we can broadly divide it into two major ways. One could be genetic causes, second could be the acquired causes. The genetic causes, various diseases that we will discuss again in detail. While considering the acquired causes of disease, that comprises the again a vast majority of variety of common diseases that is afflicting the mankind. Based on the underlying agents, the acquired causes of cell injury can be further categorized as like first is the oxygen deprivation, and it can be termed as again hypoxia and the ischemia. Remember, hypoxia and ischemia. In cases of hypoxia, see, remember this word, hypoxia, hypo plus oxia, or the hypoxia. That means there will be a less amount of oxygen to the that specific cell and tissues that may be reaching with the help of blood. Whereas in the cases of ischemia, there will be a less amount of blood to this, the less amount of blood could be supplied to that specific cell and tissue. So these two conditions are the difference one, right? There might be a certain differences. Hypoxia, where we used to talk about oxygen, whereas in the cases of ischemia, we will discuss about the blood, right? Next one could be physical agents, chemical agents, and there are certain drugs which could lead to the cell injury. Next one could be certain microbial agents, certain immunological agents, nutritional rearrangements even can be seen. Cellular aging also is responsible for the causes of cell injury. Next one could be the certain psychogenic diseases, heterogenic diseases, and the idiopathic diseases. So here first that we will discuss, that is the oxygen deprivation, or we can term it as a hypoxia. Here hypoxia reduces the aerobic oxidative respiration. Why that reduction in aerobic oxidative respiration can be seen? Because in that specific injured site, oxygen will not be supplied in that sufficient manner, and their oxygen demand will be high and the compared amount will be low. That can have a hypoxia. Here, the cells of the different tissues essentially require oxygen, right, to generate the energy and to perform certain metabolic activities. Deficiency of oxygen, or that is termed as a hypoxia, may result in failure, right, to carry out these activities by the cells. And hypoxia is the most common cause of cell injury. And that specific cell injury could have effects, right, in two ways. The most common mechanism of hypoxic cell injury is reduced supply of blood to cells due to the interruption, that is ischemia. And hypoxia may also result from the impaired blood supply from the causes of other than the interruption, like disorders of oxygen carrying, that is RBCs, like anemia, carbon monoxide poisoning, certain heart diseases, certain lung diseases, and increased demand of the specific tissues. And while considering hypoxia, it should be distinguished from the ischemia, since ischemia compromises the supply of oxygen as well as the metabolic substances like glucose also, right? Here hypoxia, we'll discuss about oxygen, or we'll talk about discussion. And while considering ischemia, it have a certain metabolic substances, right, like amino acids, those nutrients, next is fatty acids, lipids, anything that is present inside the blood. Here, while considering glucose, ischemic tissues are injured more rapidly and severely than our hypoxic tissues. In cases of hypoxic tissues, there will be a deficiency of oxygen, whereas in the cases of ischemic tissues, there will be a deficiency of that specific nutrients which are present inside blood. What are the causes of hypoxia? Inadequate oxygenation of blood due to the cardiorespiratory failure, loss of oxygen carrying capacity of blood, right? It will discuss, that is anemia. And while considering example, the femoral artery that is narrowed and the skeletal muscle undergo atrophy. And atrophy we will discuss during last lecture because it comes under cellular adaptations, and you can refer that video. Here, it achieves the balance between the metabolic needs and the available oxygen supply. Whereas in the cases of more severe hypoxia, it can lead to the cell injury and the death of cell. Second item, that is those physical agents. Here, while considering physical agents, right, it could involve the mechanical trauma, that is like road accidents, thermal trauma, that is by heat or cold or burns, or we can say that extremes of the temperature. Next one could be the sudden change in atmospheric pressure, radiation, and the electricity, that is electrical shock, right? Radiation may involve the UV and the ionizing processing, and as I discussed, the rapid change in atmospheric pressure. So even it could lead to the injury. Next one, that is those chemical agents and the drugs. Here, the glucose or salt in hypertonic concentrations may cause cell injury, that is directly or by deranging the electrolyte homeostasis of the cell. We have already discussed what is hypertonic solution, what is hypotonic solution, and what is isotonic solution, right? But here, for injury, hypertonic concentrations could be responsible. Here, the concentration of oxygen could be high. Poisons which in certain traces could lead to the injury, like arsenic. Next is CAN. Next is the mercury salts, right? Cyanide. Next one could be the environmental and the air pollutant that can lead to the cell injury. Even insecticides and the herbicides, industrial and occupational hazards like carbon monoxide and the asbestos. Here there are certain social stimuli like alcohol and narcotic drug could lead to the cell injury. Next one, that is those infectious agents. While considering infectious agents, generally submicroscopic viruses, that is to the large tapeworms, those specific viruses which could have large tapeworms. In that cases, it can lead to the infection or due to the specific tapeworms which may be present in any part of gastrointestinal tract, which can have a injury. Next is those immunological agents or immunological reactions. While as we know that the immunity, right? Immunity is a double-edged sword, right? It is a double-edged sword. And the second edge that can be seen with the certain immunodeficiency, syndrome, that can be seen with the human immunodeficiency syndrome, that is with HIV and the AIDS. So here immunity is a double-edged sword. It protects the host against various injurious agents, but in many cases it also turns lethal and causes cell injury. So here we can have example, that is anaphylactic reactions to a foreign protein or a body. Here in many cases we may have heard about that bees, right? Those bees that collects honey. In many cases of that bee bite even can lead to the death. Why that specific bee can lead to have a death? The only reason is that in that specific attempt of that bee bite could be lethal and can lead to the the death of the person due to the hyperactive those reactions, and that is what the anaphylactic reactions. Here in cases of reactions towards the endogenous self-antigens, that is what the autoimmune diseases. So it involves hypersensitivity reactions. Again, we will discuss hypersensitivity reactions in next chapter, where it could have 4 different types of hypersensitivity reactions, like 1, 2, 3, and 4. And those anaphylactic reactions that can be seen with the any type of allergen, we can consider it as a allergen. In many cases person may be known to that specific allergen, or it may happen that they may not be knowing about that specific allergen. So it can lead to the medical threatening conditions, and person may have death. Certain autoimmune diseases are even is a part of immunological reactions. Next one, that is those genetic dearrangements. While considering genetic dearrangements, as we know that decreased life of RBCs, as that can be seen in sickle cell anemia. We have already discussed during first semester, that is anemia. What is anemia? Anemia is a reduced oxygen carrying capacity in a specific patient, right, or in a person, where the oxygen cannot be loaded in a sufficient quantity. And in many cases not could be even oxygen could be responsible behind it. There are more than 4 or 5 different types of anemias are there, like the sickle cell anemia. Next is the megaloblastic anemia, sickle cell anemia. Next is there are folic acid deficiency anemia, that is nutritional anemia can be seen. So various types of those anemias could be responsible. While considering genetic dearrangement, that can be seen with the sickle cell anemia, where exactly those RBC cell may undergo the change in their structure or their shape, and it may become become straight, or in many cases it may become like a star shaped. So with their various shapes can be observed with the sickle cell anemia. Next is the last cause of it, that is the nutritional imbalances. While considering nutritional dearrangements or the imbalance, the deficiency and excess of these nutrients can lead to the cell injury. So here we need to understand the both the conditions, that is malabsorption, right? While considering the malabsorption in our mind. So here the major thing is that first thing, that is nutritional deficiency diseases, right? That might be due to the overall deficiency of nutrition. So person may not have enough amount of food. If they may have enough amount of food, the food may not be nutritious. So that is, or it might be because of the starvation, or of, starvation of the protein calorie. That is the, you can see the examples of marasmus and the kwashiorkor, or the starvation of minerals. That is what can be seen with the anemia, or of stresses of certain elements. In cases of nutritional access, right? Again, nutritional access is also a problem. While considering the nutritional access is a problem of affluent societies, that may result into the obesity, right? The person may gain excess weight. That is what the obesity Again, it could lead to the atherosclerosis. Next, it could lead to the heart diseases and the hypertensions. So that is about the nutritional imbalances. There are certain other causes that I would like to mention here. Actually, I have not mentioned here in PowerPoint presentation. It could be the aging, right? As I mentioned earlier, that aging also is responsible behind the cell injury. Here, while considering cellular aging or the senescence, that leads to the impaired ability of the cells to undergo replication. That cell may not undergo replication and the repair. While considering aging, it targets these two specific cells. One could be nervous cells or nervous tissues, that is neuron, and next one that could be cardiac cells. As we know that these two may not undergo a replication or cell division. So while considering birth to death, right, they may not have the chances of regeneration or the replication. So it could lead to the cell death and the culminating in death of the individuals. And this aspect is generally dealt with the end of this specific point. Second reason could be psychogenic diseases. While considering the psychogenic diseases, there are no specific biochemical or morphological changes that is in that is common acquired mental diseases due to the mental stresses, might be because of strain. Next is the anxiety. What is anxiety? We can say that like fear from the unknown sources. That is anxiety. Next is it could be overwork and the frustrations, and could be the example of the depression and the schizophrenia. So that comes under the psychogenic diseases. But however, while considering the problem of the drug addiction, alcoholism, smoking, it even general results into the various organic diseases like due to the alcoholism, it could lead to the liver damage. In cases of smoking, it can lead to this bronchitis and the lung cancer. Due to the addiction of drug and alcoholism and smoking, it could lead to the formation of ulcer in could be in esophagus. Next is the stomach or the duodenum. It even can lead to the hypertension and certain other ischemic heart diseases, right? So these are also again comes under the causes of cell injury. Next is heterogenic causes. While considering the uh, heterogenic causes, generally there are certain harms to the patient that can be seen. Even there are some diseases as well as death that can be attributed to the heterogenic causes. And we can have an example like occurrence of diseases or death due to the error in judgment, right? Here, while the major role belongs to the physician, because in many cases physician may not be in a condition to recognize the causes or the severity or the extent of the injury. So here the physician may have a major role. So physician leaded causes that can become as a heterogenic causes. And the last causes, that is idiopathic diseases. Here idiopathic means of unknown cause. Here cause may not be known. And finally we can say that although so much is known about the etiology of diseases, there are still certain remains in many diseases for which the exact cause is undetermined. For example, we can have a most common form of the hypertension, that is while considering India, and 90% cases of hypertension will be idiopathic, or we can say that essential hypertension, right? So here similarly the exact etiology of many cancers is still incompletely known, so that we cannot have a exact mechanism or the exact pathogenesis behind the development of diseases. So this is all about my side. So what we have discussed today, starting with the what is cell injury, next is types of cell injury, that is reversible cell injury and the irreversible cell injury. What is reversible cell injury? Where the normal condition may be attributed or it will be revert back, whereas in the cases of irreversible cell injury, the major cause or the major thing is that is responsible, that is the cause or the persistent cause or the regular damage to the saline tissues can lead to the irreversible cell injury, and that cannot be reverted back. Next, we had a discussion about the apoptosis and the necrosis and the causes of cell injury. In cases of causes of cell injury or the etiology of cell injury, we have gone through the hypoxia or ischemia. Next is the physical agents. Next is certain chemical agents with drugs, certain microbiological agents, immunological agents, certain nutritional dearrangements. Next is aging, psychogenic diseases, heterogenic factors, and at last we had a discussion on idiopathic diseases. So this is all about from today's class. Thank you very much.